Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the Republic of Azerbaijan and President Aliyev for hosting, in my opinion, this urgent conference. We have gathered at COP29 in the midst of a war. The good news is, some would say, that the aggressor is already suffering heavy losses and will most probably lose the war. The bad news is that the aggressor is humankind itself, with its unsustainable production systems and consumer habits. Unless we hold global warming below 1.5 degrees by 2050, instead of sustainability and growth, we will have to think about habitability and survival. In this war against nature, it is the innocent, the children, the vulnerable populations and small developing nations who often suffer most. Situated in one of the most climate vulnerable regions in the world, the Mediterranean, we must adapt our security, defense, energy, health, tourism, water, educational and other systems to this multidimensional challenge, making them inclusive to women, children and youth. We have endorsed the declarations on enhanced action in tourism and on water for climate action. In addition, I have appointed a climate expert in my National Security Council, and we have joined the group of friends on climate and security. Our goal is to accelerate the transition to a low-carbon economy across all sectors, including energy, transport, industry and agriculture. To achieve green growth, we will invest in green jobs and reskill workers, moving away from carbon-based energy production. Sustainable energy transition must be environmentally and socially just. We adopted a long climate action. We will introduce a legal framework for monitoring, reporting, verification and accreditation. In parallel, we will adopt a revised law on energy and a new law on renewables. These laws support the implementation of the challenging green agenda and sustainable connectivity cluster in EU membership negotiations, requiring €3.1 billion for renewable energy and energy efficiency. The Economic and Investment Plan and the Green Agenda for the Western Balkans provide funding for this. Regardless of progress in the EU accession process, countries should have ongoing access to climate action funds before membership. Esteemed Excellencies, we need a peace agreement, a natural contract, as Michel Serra would say, to stop treating nature as adversary and start treating it as partner. The Paris Agreement, the SDGs, and are the blueprint of that peace agreement, of that natural contract. Let's implement them in the line with the principle Pacta sunt servanda.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Alexander Stubb, President of Finland. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies and colleagues. In the age of multipolarity, we probably need multilateralism more than ever. And I guess climate change is a litmus test for multilateralism. And the reason for that is quite simple. If we fail this test, efforts to address any kind of global challenges, say sustainable development, technology or demography, will all be in vain. And of course, if we fail to limit the increase of global temperature, future generations will be left with a world which has more pandemics, more hunger, and more conflict. Now, at the same time, we must of course ensure that climate action is aligned with the broader development agenda. And I don't say the following thing just because I have a daughter of 23 years old, but I do want to emphasize the importance of women and youth in the fight against climate change. And in many ways, the choice is actually quite binary. It's black and white. You can have either multipolar and transactional disorder or multilateral cooperative order. Without changing the current power balance, I'm afraid the former will prevail over the latter. Now, the growing influence of formats such as G20, where representation better reflects the global realities, is of course welcome. But taking on more power in global decision-making should also mean taking more responsibility. Countries which seek to upgrade their global influence to reflect modern realities cannot demand that global responsibilities are forever based on circumstances in the early 1990s. So therefore, the largest emitters and the largest economies will determine the direction of the whole planet. Reflecting on these developments, I would like to underline 3 points where I think COP29 is pivotal. First, we all have to take more responsibility for reducing emissions. Last year in Dubai, we took the crucial step by agreeing on the transition away from fossil fuels. Now we need to turn our promises into practice as we prepare our new nationally determined contributions ahead of COP30 in Belém. It's crucial that especially the G20 members show leadership by setting the most ambitious targets possible in line with the 1.5 degrees limit. Second, we all have to take more responsibility for climate finance. The new collective quantified goal needs to be both ambitious and achievable. It has to reflect the current global economy and sources of emission, not the situation more than 30 years ago. I'm pleased to announce that Finland will be providing additional funding to the Systematic Observations Finance Facility to help strengthen adaptation and build resilience, especially in the least developed countries and small island developing stage. And let me conclude by saying that we actually need 3 things simultaneously. We need targets and legislation, we need finance, both public and private, and we need technological innovations. And the bottom line is that we need all 3 of them together. We cannot regulate ourselves out of this crisis, we cannot pay ourselves out of these crises, but we can innovate ourselves from this crisis. Here in Baku, I'm really looking forward to explore all of these things achieved together. And whenever in the future I hear that gong, I shall take it as a symbol for the urgency we have to fight climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Jakov Milatovic, President of Montenegro. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Your Excellencies, it is a profound honor to participate on behalf of Montenegro in this distinguished gathering. COP29 is taking place at a crucial time. The data from the UN agencies are showing that 2024 is on track to be the hottest year on record. The negative consequences of the climate change are increasingly impacting communities worldwide, with Montenegro being no exception, thus underscoring the urgent need for climate action. Since the early 1990s, Montenegro's commitment to aligning national policies with international sustainability standards has been evident. especially when the country became the first nation in the world to establish its status as an ecological state within our own constitution, thus pledging to integrate all environmental considerations across areas of national governance. Although our share in global CO2 emissions is negligible and Montenegro's contribution to environmental goals may seem modest in a global context, this does not exempt us from the responsibility to contribute to collective efforts towards carbon neutrality. As an EU candidate country, Montenegro aligns its policies with those of the EU, and as such, we have committed to sharing the climate ambition expressed in the European Green Agenda. Through our NDCs, Montenegro has pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels. And as the goal is assessed to have been already achieved, the country is planning to raise the target to 55%, while the policymakers are actively exploring ways to further enhance this goal. In parallel, Montenegro is actively investing in renewable energy infrastructure, including the development of wind farms and solar energy panels, while the plans for doubling the capacity of the undersea electricity connection with Italy is already being planned, thus positioning Montenegro as a unique link between the Balkan and Italian electricity systems. The country is accelerating the implementation of energy efficiency initiatives, especially within public institutions, and these efforts are being supported by major international organizations. Montenegro has also emerged as a regional leader in innovative financing mechanisms for sustainable development. Building on existing institutions like the Eco Fund, the country has, in partnership with the UN office in Montenegro, introduced what we call Sustainable Development Goals Acceleration Fund, thus creating a unique and powerful tool for fostering partnerships that represent a new generation of financing for SDGs. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, on the path to carbon neutrality, we must remain committed to just transition. Dear colleagues, time is the most precious resource at our disposal, and every day counts as crucial in our collective pursuit of a climate-resilient economy. Collaboration is essential in this endeavour, so I urge us all to leave this event with a renewed sense of urgency and commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Ramchandra Paldale, President of Nepal. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
अध्यक्षज्यू, महामहिम तथा सज्जनवृन्द, म आज जलवायु न्याय र क्षतिपूर्तिको आवाज लिएर यस सम्मेलनमा सहभागी हुन आएको छु। नगण्य कार्बन उत्सर्जन गर्ने तर व्यापक नकारात्मक असर बेहोर्नुपर्ने विरोधाभासपूर्ण अवस्थाबाट नेपाल गुज्रिरहेको छ। नेपाल अहिले पनि जलवायुजन्य प्रकोपको आलो पीडामा छ। हालैको बाढी, पहिरो र हिमताल विस्फोट जस्ता विपदबाट सयौं मानिसको मृत्यु र अरबौंको भौतिक क्षति भएको छ, जसको पुनर्लाभ र पुनर्स्थापन अझ भइसकेको छैन। जलवायु परिवर्तनको मारबाट पृथ्वी नै सङ्कटमा त छ, तर विशेष गरी गरिब, अल्पविकसित, विकासशील तथा साना टापु मुलुकहरू यसको पीडाबाट बढी प्रभावित छन्। विश्व समुदायको हित र पृथ्वीको रक्षाको लागि नेपालले प्राकृतिक स्रोत साधनको उपयोगमा अनुशासन कायम राख्दै कार्बन उत्सर्जन न्यूनीकरणको महत्त्वाकांक्षी एनडीसी योजना कार्यान्वयन गरिरहेका छौं। वन क्षेत्र बढाएका छौं, स्वच्छ ऊर्जा उत्पादन र आपूर्तिमा जोड दिएका छौं। अरु थुप्रै प्रयासहरू भएका छन्। हाम्रा प्रयासका तुलनामा जलवायु परिवर्तनको असर व्यापक रहेकोले हाम्रा सामु धेरै चुनौतीहरू छन्, जसको सामना गर्न हाम्रो क्षमताले पुग्दैन। अध्यक्षज्यू, जलवायु अनुकूलन र उत्सर्जन न्यूनीकरणका लागि हामीले गरिबी निवारणमा छुट्याएको बजेट कटौती गर्नु परेको छ। यसबाट हामीहरू झन अन्यायमा परेका छौं। यसका लागि प्रदूषकले प्रदूषण बापतको क्षतिपूर्ति तिर्नुपर्ने सिद्धान्त व्यवहारमा लागू गर्नुको साथै उत्सर्जन घटाउनु पनि पर्दछ। जलवायु वित्त कोषहरूमा घोषणा गरिएको रकम अपुग्त छँदैछ। घोषणा गरिएको रकम पनि जम्मा हुन नसक्नु, जम्मा भएको रकम पनि झन्झटिलो प्रक्रियाले गर्दा लक्षित समुदायमा सहज पहुँच हुन नसक्नु दुःखद हो। जलवायु जोखिममा परेका विकासशील राष्ट्रलाई दिने गरी स्थापना भएको हानि नोक्सानी कोषलाई छिटो सञ्चालनमा ल्याउन म आह्वान गर्दछु। हिमाल, स्वच्छ पानी र जैविक विविधताको संरक्षणमा योगदान गर्ने नेपाल जस्तो मुलुकको योगदानको मूल्याङ्कन र सोको भुक्तानीमा जोड दिन चाहन्छु। पेरिस सम्झौताको बाध्यकारी व्यवस्था र विकसित राष्ट्रको प्रतिबद्धता अनुरूप प्रविधि हस्तान्तरण र क्षमता विकासमा यथेष्ट अनुदान रकम प्रदान गरिनुपर्दछ। जलवायु वित्तबाट सञ्चालन हुने कार्यक्रम अनुदानका रूपमा राज्य कोष मार्फत सञ्चालन गर्न आवश्यक छ। अध्यक्षज्यू, गोला बारुदमा खर्च भइरहेको ठूलो स्रोत साधन जलवायु परिवर्तनका नकारात्मक असर न्यूनीकरण गर्दै मानव सभ्यताको बचाउमा उपयोग गर्नुपर्दछ। जलवायु न्याय, समता र क्षमताका आधारमा जलवायु वित्तमा नवीन साझा परिणामात्मक लक्ष्य निर्धारण गर्न र पृथ्वीको औसत तापक्रम वृद्धिलाई 1.5% 5 डिग्री सेल्सियसमा सीमित राख्न तथा हिमाली एवं अल्प विकसित मुलुकहरूलाई जलवायु न्याय एवं दिगो विकास सुनिश्चित गर्न सम्मेलनले ठोस प्रतिबद्धता गर्नेछ भन्ने आशा लिएको छु। पर्वतीय मुलुकका सेता हिमाल काला पहाडमा परिणत हुने क्रमले ती मुलुकमा मात्र होइन तल्लो तटीय मुलुकहरूलाई संकटमा पुर्याउँछ भन्ने विश्वले बिर्सनुहुन्न। यसका लागि हिमालदेखि समुद्रको सम्मको एकीकृत र समष्टिगत अनुकूलन अवधारणालाई औपचारिक संवादको विषय बनाउन प्रस्ताव गर्दछु। नेपालले यसै अवधारणामा आधारित भई सगरमाथा संवाद कार्यक्रम सञ्चालन गर्न लागेको म जानकारी गराउँदछु। अन्त्यमा हिमालको सुरक्षा भनेकै पृथ्वीको सुरक्षा हो भन्ने सबैले ख्याल गरौं। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Chandrika Prasad Santokhi, President of Suriname. His Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon. As President, I'm here today to inform the COP that my country, Suriname, a member of CARICOM, a carbon-negative nation, rich in natural resources, is on a path of sustainable green development strategy and is a determined advocate in the fight against climate change. Our vast forests, still covering 93% of our territory, act as a vital carbon sink, absorbing more carbon dioxide than our economy emits, and we are committed to stay carbon negative. CARICOM and CIS nations are facing the injustice of a crisis they didn't cause, a crisis they cannot solve alone, even with their best efforts to cut their emissions, which are now lower than 1%. Developed countries must act now to support the resilience and transition of developing nations. We as CARICOM leaders are committed to stay below 1.5 degrees this century as pledged, and we ask you all to do your part. My country will continue to contribute to our green transition, adapt to climate impacts, and achieve our sustainable development goals through a green development strategy, leaving no one behind. A balanced and responsible exploitation of the oil and gas sector after the announcement of the FID recently will be an integral part of this strategy. Suriname's strong commitment to environmental leadership is evident through our leading position in the Environmental Performance Index in Latin America and being the first country to develop internationally transferred mitigation outcomes ITMOs. Madam President, most CARICOM states lack the financial capacity and resources to recover from escalating climate impacts. Outdated GDP-based criteria keep concessional financing out of the reach of many of us, despite adoption of the multidimensional vulnerability index at the United Nations. Yet international financial institutions have not implemented it. CARICOM calls for a binding commitment to allocate at least 15% of climate finance to SITs instead of the unacceptable 1.5% SITs now receive. We call for easier, more tailored access to climate financing for SITs, including simplified applications, capacity building, direct funding, and affordable financing. Developed nations have a duty to support those less responsible and more vulnerable to climate change, requiring immediate action to correct this imbalance and climate injustice. The Loss and Damage Fund must be made functional and effective urgently. This must be fixed in 2025. Without significant increases in climate finance, SITs cannot adapt the climate impacts or achieve sustainable development. Inaction threatens their very existence. Finally, Mr. President, it is time to take bold action now to help SITs confront the urgent threat of climate change. I thank you, and may God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Denis Bersirovic, Chairman of the Presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Distinguished Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me thank to host Azerbaijan and United Nations for organizing this important conference. The state of our planet is alarming. Accelerated climate changes are the result of irresponsible human actions. By industrializing the earth, man endangered nature and thus endangered himself. The path our civilization is currently on is leading to catastrophe. One of the key problems today is the complete erosion of morale. We are witnessing that some big countries preach heaven but practice hell. Because of such policy, both people and nature are suffering. One of the biggest obstacles in the fight against the climate crisis is state egoism. Unfortunately, certain countries consider that this is not a critical issue for the current generation and choose to defer its resolution to future generations. This mindset is deeply wrong. The challenges are different for each of our countries, but the goal is the same. Let's be on the same side in the fight against the climate crisis. The growing climate crisis requires us to make changes in our value system. To mitigate the climate crisis, we need to focus, among other things, on more responsible policies that promote nature protection, improvement of green financing standards, strengthening climate diplomacy, educational programs that will encourage climate innovation, and empowering a new generation of climate leaders. Bosnia and Herzegovina is determined to contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, achieve climate neutrality, carry out the energy transition, and to contribute to the implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change. Bosnia and Herzegovina is actively working on the adoption of the Integrated National Energy and Climate Plan. The document outlines Bosnia and Herzegovina's strategic determination, direction in the process of decarbonization of the energy sector until 2030, with a clear vision to 2050. Finally, let's not forget, the earth does not belong to humans, but humans belong to the earth. Let's continue our fight against climate change. It is a fight for our future. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Nana Addo Danwa Kufu-Addo, President of Ghana. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished leaders, Ghana thanks Azerbaijan for her warm welcome and congratulates her for assuming the chairmanship of COP with dedication to our shared future, as I attend COP for the last time as President of the Republic of Ghana. Today we gather not merely as leaders or policymakers, but as individuals bound by our love for our lands and future generations. We're here to declare we stand in solidarity for a green world. For Ghana, climate change is real and immediate, affecting our farmers, coastlines, and communities. Rising temperatures and unpredictable weather threaten our livelihoods daily. Yet we respond with resilience and commitment. In 2021, Ghana submitted updated nationally determined contributions to the United Nations, encompassing 47 programs to mitigate and adapt to climate impacts. Our goal is to cut emissions by 64 million metric tons by 2030. Demanding investments between 10 and 15 billion United States dollars. Despite financial and technical hurdles, we're determined to meet the Paris Agreement's goals across agriculture, transport, forestry, energy, and other sectors. We have made strides. The Green Ghana project has planted 50 million trees, and forest restoration efforts have covered 721,000 hectares since 2017, when I came to office. 13 mitigation actions have cut annual greenhouse gas emissions by 43% since 2021. Ghana's national electric vehicle policy, backed by tax incentives, promotes sustainable mobility, and our energy transition framework steers us towards a green future. Through Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, Ghana has mobilized 800 million United States dollars by trading carbon credits with nations like Switzerland and Sweden. However, we cannot reach our climate goals alone. We call on our global partners to honor their commitments, ensuring accessible concessional financing for sustainable development in Africa without unsustainable debt. As a father and a grandfather, I question what we will leave behind. What world will we leave behind? Our children's future hinges on our decisions. That COP29 here in Azerbaijan mark a pivotal shift from dialogue to decisive action. Let us act boldly, showing future generations that we fought for them. Ghana stands united with the world for a green, resilient tomorrow. Madam Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Kurul Suk Akna, President of Mongolia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Бүгд найрамдах Азербайджан улсын ерөнхийлөгч эрхэмсэг ноён Илхам Алиев, эрхэм үндэт нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын ерөнхий нэрийн бичгийн дарга Антонио Гутерриш, эрхэм үндэт зочид төлөөлөгчид хатагтай ноёдоо. Байгалийн хүчин зүйл хүний үйл ажиллагааны сөрөг нөлөөгөөр дэлхийн уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлт хурдтай явагдаж, дэлхийн техникийн тогтвортой хөгжил, хүн төрөлхтний амьдрал сөргөөр нөлөөлж буй энэ цаг үед та бид улс төрийн манлайлал, хамтын хүчин чармаалт, үйл ажиллагаагаа улам эрчимжүүлэх шаардлага зүй ёсоор тавигдж байна. Улс орнууд Парисын хэлцээр хүлээсэн үүрэг амлалтаа биелүүлэх боломж улам бүр буурсаар байгааг нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагаас та бидэнд байнга анхааруулж байгаа. Нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын ерөнхий нэрийн бичгийн дарга Антонио Гутерриш, амжилтгүй манлайлал, биелүүлэггүй үүрэг амлалт, асар их алдагдсан боломжоо шалтгаалж, ам ажлын зөрүүний ангал хавцад үүслэ хэмээн хэлснийг бид онцгой анхаарч ажиллах шаардлагатай байгаамаа. Тиймээс өнөөдөр хүн төрөлхтөн их байгалыг эрхшээх бус энэрэн хүндэтгэх нэгэн зорилгодоор хамтын ирээдүйн төлөө нэгдэж, улс орон бүр илүү бодит үр дүнд хүрэхийн тулд төр, хувийн хэвшил, иргэний нийгэм зэрэг нийгмийн бүх бүлгүүдийг хамарсан үндэсний хэмжээний зөвшөлтсөл, нэгдмэл бодлого, харилцан ойлголцлыг бэхжүүлэх явдал шаардлагатай байна. Хэрвээ хүн төрөлхтөн их дэлхийг хамгаалах, уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлт, газрын доройтол, биологийн олон янз байдлын хомсдолтой цаг алдалгүй эрс шийдэмгий тэмцэхгүй бол их дэлхий цаашид та бидэндгүйгээр оршин тогтнох өөрийн замаа сонгох болно. Их байгальтайгаа зүйс зохистой зэрэгцэн орчин хүн төрөлхтний оршин тогтохын үндэс болохыг бид хизээч мартаж болохгүй. Ялангуяа хөгжиж болон уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтөд өртөмтгий эмзэг улс орнуудын хувьд өрийн хэмжээ өндөр, дотоод төсөв, санхүүгийн нөөц боломж бага байгаагаас тэдгээр улс орнууд Парисын хэлцээрээр хүлээсэн үүрэг амлалтаа амжилттай бүрэн биелүүлэхэд санхүүгийн эрсдэлтэй нүүр тулж байгаамаа. Тиймээс энэ удаагийн 29-р баг хурлаар дэлхийн удирдагчид, улс орнууд, ялангуяа хөгжиж буй орнуудын тэргүүлэх чиглэл, хэрэгцээ шаардлагыг харгалзан үзэж, уур амьсгалын санхүүжилтийн нэгдмэл хамтын шинэ зорилгыг дэмжин баталж, уур амьсгалын санхүүжилтийг эрс нэмэгдүүлэх шаардлагатай байгааг бас онцлон тэмдэглэж байна. Монгол улсын хувьд Парисын хэлцээрээр хүлээсэн үүрэг амлалтаа бүрэн амжилттай хэрэгжүүлэхэд ойролцоогоор дотоодын нийт бүтээгдэхүүний 50 гаруй хувьтай тэмцэх хэмжээний санхүүжилт шаардлагатай байгаа юм. Энэ хүрээнд манай улс сэргээрт гэрчим хүч, ногоон хөдөө аж ахуй, ойн салбарын санхүүжилт, хөрөнгө оруулалтыг нэмэгдүүлэх зорилгоор хууль эрх зүй, бизнесийн орчны цогц шинжилгээг бас хийж байна. Тухайлбал манай улс тэр умд үндэсний хөдөлгөөний хүрээнд олон улсын хамтын ажиллагаа, хөрөнгө оруулалтыг нэмэгдүүлэх, мөнхийн Монгол байгаль хамгааллын байнгын санхүүжилтийн тогтолцоог бүрдүүлээд байна. Эрхэм хүндэт хурлын дарга, нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын эмэгтэйчүүдийн байгууллагын судалгаагаар хэрв дэлхийн нийт уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтийг сааруулах зорилттой хүрч чадахгүй тохиолдолд 2050 он хүртэл 160 сая орчим охид эмэгтэйчүүд шинээр ядууралд өртөж, 240 сая орчим охид эмэгтэйчүүдийн хүнсний аюулгүй байдал алдагдах эрсдэлтэй байгааг анхааруулсан байна. Тиймээс Монгол улс өнгөрсөн 8 дугаар сард нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагатай хамтран дэлхийн эмэгтэйчүүдийн чуулга уулзалтыг ногоон ирээдүйн төлөө уран дор эх орондоо амжилттай зохион байгуулсан. Тогтвортой хөгжлийн ирээдүйн төлөөх Улаанбаатарын тунхлыг гарган уур амьсгалын өөрчлөлтөд тэмцэхэд эмэгтэйчүүдийн оролцоо манлайлалыг нэмэгдүүлэх уриалгыг дэлхийн улс орнуудад дэвшүүлээд байна. Түүнчлэн Энэхүү санаачлагын нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын ерөнхий ассамблеийн баталсан 2025 оныг хоршоолын олон улсын жил болгон тэмдэглэх тухай, 2026 оныг бэлчээр ба нүүдлийн мал аж ахуйн олон улсын жилээр зарлах тухай тогтоолыг хэрэгжүүлэх болон цөлжилтөд тэмцэх нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын конвенцийн талуудын 17 дугаар баг хурлыг 2026 онд Улаанбаатар хотноо зохион байгуулах бэлтгэлийг хангахад чухал хон нэмэр болно гэж бид үзэж байна. Мөн Монгол улс хөлөмжийн хийг бууруулах, шингээлтийг нэмэгдүүлэх, олон улсын хамтын нийгэмлэгийн хүчин чармаалтыг бүрэн дэмжиж, Парисын хилцээр хүлээс үүрэг амлалтаа биелүүлэхийн төлөө хувь нэмрээ оруулан бүхийд боломжоо дайчлан ажиллана гэдгээ бас үгээр дахин нотолж байна. Мөнх хөх тэнгэр хүн төрлөختөн биднийг үнэн мөнхөд ивэж, дайны дэлхийн амар амгалан байх болтугай. Баярлалаа. Баярлалаа. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Teya Asiti Selassie Amdi, President of Ethiopia. Your Excellency, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Excellencies, heads of state and governments, distinguished dignitaries, I express my sincere gratitude to the government and people of the Republic of Azerbaijan for their gracious hospitality. Under the Azerbaijan's leadership, we aspire and hope to translate our Paris Agreement commitments into tangible actions. We must collectively reverse humanity's trajectory of destruction and do justice to the victims of climate change, particularly vulnerable nations in Africa and small island states. Without probing into the familiar debates, Excellencies, I wish to outline 5 initiatives Ethiopia has employed to enhance our collective climate effort. First, under Ethiopia's Green Legacy Initiative, we were able to plant 40 billion seedlings, expanding our forest coverage to 23.6% with the potential to sink 10 billion tons of carbon. We have allocated 1% of our national budget for the Green Legacy and Land Restoration Fund. This initiative can be scaled up, and we urge global support for this endeavor. Second, our heat-resistant wheat project yield 107 million quintals of wheat in 3 years, making our food system carbon negative and our crops climate resilient. With adequate financial support, Ethiopia's model can be replicated globally. Third, as part of our national determined contributions, Ethiopia has demonstrated measurable and implementable renewable energy by heavily investing in hydro-based and diversified clean energy generation. We have accomplished this by leveraging our own domestic resources. It is in this light that we are successful integrating energy grids in the region as well. 4, cognizant of the fact that urban green space have declined, Ethiopia, through its corridor development program, prioritizes people-centered and climate-smart approach to reverse this alarming trend. Addis Ababa is a testament to this. 5th, Ethiopia has now become among the few nations in the world to pass a law banning fuel automobiles as part of reducing the impact of greenhouse gas emission. Finally, the debate on climate finance has become overly complex and painstakingly slow-paced. We have to simplify the process and focus on practical solutions. We must finalize the new collective quantified goal on climate finance and make it operational. While we demand increased financial support, we express deep concern over the inadequate, complex and delayed disbursement of existing funds. Many African nations are leading by example to the best of our abilities. In light of this, Ethiopia has developed its subsequent NDCs, long-term low emission development strategy, and national adaptation plan that guides our collective commitment to significantly lessen the impact of climate change. We therefore urge all countries, particularly developed nations and major emitters, to follow suit. Indeed, the clock is ticking. Therefore, there is no time to lose, and let us join hands to build a sustainable future for generations to come. I thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency First Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Abdurrahman al-Burhan, President of Sudan. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سيد الرئيس، حضور جميعا، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسرني أن أتقدم أولا بالشكر لفخامة الرئيس إلهام علييف رئيس جمهورية أذربيجان ولسيد الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة على تنظيم هذا الملتقى الهام، متمنيا التوفيق والنجاح لأعمال الدورة 29. سيد الرئيس، نجتمع اليوم وكوكبنا يزداد تحديات وتزداد مخاطره جراء آثار تغير المناخ وانعكاساته السالبة على قطاعات هامة في حياة الناس في المياه والزراعة والأمن الغذائي والصحة والموارد الطبيعية. وقد طالب السودان كغيره من الدول بضرورة تنفيذ اتفاقية باريس كأولوية رئيسية، وما زالت بلادي تساهم بفعالية في تنفيذ الاتفاقية على المستوى العالمي والإقليمي والوطني. وقد ظلت قضية التكيف المناخي على رأس الأولويات في الحكومة لتأثيرها على برامج التنمية الوطنية. سيد الرئيس، حضور الكرام، إنما تتعرض له بلادي من عدوان تشنه عليه ميليشيا الدعم السريع المتمردة، وما سببته هذه الحرب من أضرار بالغة بالدولة وبنيتها الاقتصادية والبيئية، حيث تضررت البيئة ضررا مزدوجا. فمع تغير المناخ ساهمت الممارسات غير المستدامة الناتجة عن الحرب مثل زيادة قطع الغابات والنزوح الداخلي وهجر الأراضي الزراعية وزيادة التلوث الناجم عن مخلفات الحرب نتيجة لتدمير البنية التحتية. رغم ذلك اتخذنا في حكومة السودان العديد من السياسات والإجراءات، واعتمدت الحكومة خطط وبرامج لزيادة كفاءة الإنتاج وزيادة نسبة الاعتماد على الطاقات البديلة. سيد الرئيس، ختاما، تظل قضايا التمويل وتوطين واستدامة التنمية من أهم المطلوبات من المجتمع الدولي والدول المانحة لمساعدة الدول النامية والأقل نمواً لإيجاد الحلول لقضايا تغير المناخ والتكيف للإيفاء بالالتزامات التي تعين دولنا على ذلك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Mia Sandu, President of the Republic of Moldova. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Distinguished delegates, it's an honor to address you on behalf of the Moldovan people. My deep gratitude goes to His Excellency President Aliyev and the government of Azerbaijan for hosting COP29 in Baku. Ladies and gentlemen, Moldova exemplifies the injustice of climate change. While contributing a mere 0.03% of global emissions, we are Europe's most vulnerable country to climate impacts. For Moldova, climate change is not a distant threat. It is a present reality impacting our daily lives, economy, and especially our rural communities who depend on agriculture. Rising temperatures, prolonged droughts, and erratic rainfall are reducing yields in crops like wheat and corn, while Moldova's vineyards, central to our economy and heritage, face new challenges. Access to water is increasingly strained, affecting both agriculture and daily life. Small and developing economies worldwide share this burden, often lacking the resources to recover. This underscores the urgent need for an equitable, accessible climate finance system that prioritizes vulnerable nations and builds resilience. It's only fair that we count on support from major economies. To expedite climate action, existing funds and programs must also cut through the bureaucratic delays, which can span years. In Moldova, we're doing our part. Despite multiple crises due to Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, which impacts our economy significantly, we launched a national afforestation program, an effort to expand forest cover by 5%. Showing our commitment to a greener future. Despite limited resources, we pursue this goal for the health of our planet and future generations, improving air quality, biodiversity and land. The recent global energy crisis spurred us into swift action. We're reducing consumption through energy efficiency and expanding renewables. Yet, afforestation and decarbonization are costly, and with greater support, we could accelerate this existential work. Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out. Global warming won't wait until other crises are resolved. History will judge us if we fail to act, risking vast areas of our planet becoming unlivable. Our solidarity today will shape the Earth's future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Geraldo Ackman, Vice President of Brazil. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Senhora Presidente, senhoras e senhores, o percurso e os esforços diplomáticos da Convenção do Clima, iniciados em 1992, no Rio de Janeiro, Brasil, nos trazem agora a BAKU, no Azerbaijão, para a COP29. Cada uma das etapas desse caminho representa avanços e hesitações do multilateralismo na tarefa de atingir metas ambientais comuns e na capacidade de estarmos à altura dos desafios. A Conferência de Baku aspira a definir o novo objetivo de financiamento climático. Esse objetivo deve ser ambicioso, de modo a limitar o aumento da temperatura a 1,5 graus Celsius. Baku tem também o desafio de finalizar as negociações do mercado de carbono e orientar o caminho para a implementação dos compromissos históricos atingidos na COP28, em particular sobre energia e florestas. O Brasil é reconhecido como uma potência ambiental e também líder na segurança alimentar. Temos a maior floresta tropical do mundo. Temos a matriz energética mais limpa entre as grandes economias. Uma agricultura eficiente e verde. E, sobretudo, temos a consciência e o comprometimento de que só há um futuro se for sustentável. Estamos implementando o Plano Clima, que servirá como guia da política climática brasileira até 2035. Firmamos também o Pacto pela Transformação Ecológica entre os 3 poderes do Estado brasileiro, para a implementação do qual é fundamental a participação da sociedade civil. Precisamos de medidas concretas e no ritmo necessário. Terei a honra de apresentar nessa COP29 a NDC do Brasil. Nossa meta reflete nossa mais alta ambição, a redução de emissões de até 67% até 2035, comparada ao ano de 2005. Ambiciosa, certamente, mas também factível. Para isso, entretanto, precisaremos juntos assegurar as condições e meios de implementação adequados. Nossa NDC é muito mais do que simplesmente uma meta de redução de emissões para 2035. Ela reflete a visão de um país que se volta para o futuro e que está determinado a ser protagonista da nova economia global, com energias renováveis, combate à desigualdade e comprometimento com o desenvolvimento sustentável. O sucesso da COP29 é parte fundamental para o sucesso da COP30, que teremos o orgulho de sediar em Belém, no Brasil, e também para a resposta global à mudança do clima. A omissão de agora custará muito para o depois. Em nome do presidente Lula, I hope to see you next year in Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Philip Isidore Mapango, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, here we are yet for another COP, dubbed as a finance COP, where we need to work together in solidarity for a green world. We meet at a time when the greenhouse gas emissions and temperatures are rising to record-breaking levels with dire consequences, particularly to developing countries. Climate change is not a distant concern, but a current reality. The last few weeks have seen catastrophic flooding in Spain, devastating fires in the Amazon, and torrential rains displacing millions in South Asia. My country has also not been spared by such catastrophic events, and they are costing us 2 to 3% of our GDP lost annually. While a total of $19.2 billion will be needed by 2030 to deliver on our NDCs, so far only about $500 million have been received, necessitating use of our own internal resources at the expense of other development projects and increasing our debt burden. And this scenario is now the order of the day across Africa. And this is obviously inappropriate and unethical for adaptation, loss, damage, and for Africa that never caused this problem. Since Copenhagen, the promise of real finance has been elusive. The finance COP, therefore, must move from empty rhetoric and come up with bold decisions that address the financing needs of countries corresponding to the urgency of the climate crisis. We look forward to a fit-for-purpose new collective quantified goal to replace the $100 billion goal agreed in 2009. This is indeed an opportunity to drive systemic change in climate finance, because what will be agreed will inform climate action or inaction for years to come. Climate finance is about responsibility and justice as agreed, and therefore COP29 must also maintain the momentum on loss and damage so that the fund does not become an empty shell, negating the gains made last year at COP28 in Dubai. Excellencies, Tanzania remains committed to contribute to global efforts to combat climate change. We are using own resources on projects that foster development and those that supply clean energy, environmentally friendly transportation systems, improved early warning systems and waste management. In addition, Tanzania has a total area of 48.1 million hectares of forest reserves with an estimated carbon storage potential equivalent to 2% of the world's total carbon. Also, Tanzania has territorial sea area covering 64,500 square kilometers, which provide a big potential for blue economy. We are committed to continue conserving these critical marine and forest ecosystems. Indeed, we are already acting in solidarity for a green world, even with our own meager resources. Yet the challenge we are facing is that carbon markets are not yet fully defined, and thus denying our countries the payments they deserve. There is lack of information and capacity to participate gainfully in carbon markets. To conclude, let me emphasize that we cannot talk about a just transition without focusing on clean cooking. That matters greatly to the majority of Africans. About 900 million people in Africa still cook using biomass fuels, resulting into deforestation, loss of carbon sinks, and deaths due to smoke-related diseases. For this reason, my president, Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan, decided to champion clean cooking on the African continent, and we call on COP29 to take up clean cooking as one of the priority areas under a just transition and mitigation finance discussions. As a show of leadership, Tanzania is implementing the clean cooking strategy to ensure the availability of clean, safe, and affordable cooking energy to about 80% of households by 2034, and has launched a Pan-African Women Clean Cooking Support Program that requires financial support of about $4 billion annually by 2030 to transform the continent with clean cooking solutions. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Temimoko Mailet Kone, Vice President of Côte d'Ivoire. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madame la Présidente, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, notre rencontre de ce jour se tient dans un contexte où la crise climatique a atteint un niveau d'urgence sans précédent. Le dernier rapport des Nations Unies sur le climat est alarmant. Notre planète se réchauffe à un rythme inquiétant qui nous éloigne de l'objectif de 1,5 degré Celsius fixé à Paris. L'humanité est à un tournant décisif et nous devons agir rapidement et collectivement pour faire face aux phénomènes climatiques de plus en plus destructeurs. Aucun pays ne semble d'ailleurs épargné. En Côte d'Ivoire, les actions audacieuses sont en cours. Sans ces actions, notre PIB pourrait baisser de 13% d'ici 2050 et près de 2 millions d'Ivoiriens pourraient basculer dans l'extrême pauvreté. Il est clair que les conséquences économiques, sociales et sanitaires seront inévitables si nous demeurons passifs. C'est pourquoi, sous le leadership de son Excellence M. Alassane Ouattara, président de la République de Côte d'Ivoire, notre pays a pris des mesures fortes qui confirment notre engagement dans la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris. Cette année, nous avons conclu avec le Fonds monétaire international la facilité pour la résilience et la durabilité et exploré, en collaboration avec de nombreux partenaires, dont la Banque mondiale, des solutions de financement innovantes. Parallèlement, nous avons renforcé notre gouvernance en créant une commission nationale sur le changement climatique et un bureau du marché du carbone. Nous avons ainsi adopté un projet de loi sur le climat. Aujourd'hui, la Côte d'Ivoire est prête à intégrer le marché international de carbone avec des réductions d'émissions de haute intégrité liées à la préservation forestière. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, nous devons nous rendre à l'évidence. Les drames liés au climat, ainsi que la disparition rapide de la riche biodiversité de notre planète, menacent fortement notre avenir commun. Face à la gravité de cette situation, la Côte d'Ivoire appelle au respect des engagements pris lors des de la COP28 et lors des conférences précédentes, notamment l'abondement des fonds pertes et dommages et la mobilisation des ressources attendues par l'Afrique et les pays en développement pour mieux s'adapter au changement climatique. Mais au-delà, les grandes économies doivent réduire drastiquement leurs émissions de gaz à effet de serre pour faciliter l'accès aux technologies climatiques et accélérer le financement de la transition énergétique des pays en développement. L'Afrique, qui fournit l'essentiel des matières premières stratégiques, doit légitimement bénéficier des ressources suffisantes pour financer sa transition énergétique sans s'adapter, sans s'endetter davantage. Mesdames et Messieurs, cette conférence se doit d'être plus que jamais à la hauteur des attentes des populations du monde. À cet effet, les pays développés ont l'impérieux devoir de rehausser leur action en faveur du climat. Ils doivent trouver un accord plus ambitieux avec les pays en développement, basé sur un nouvel objectif de financement climatique, tenant compte des besoins spécifiques légitimes des régions les plus vulnérables aux effets de réchauffement. Le lourd tribut payé par nos populations face aux drames climatiques de plus en plus violents recommande que nous puissions dépasser nos divergences et nous accorder sur des financements urgents, indispensables pour parvenir à des solutions pérennes. Faisons ensemble que cette COP29 soit un tournant décisif en forgeant un consensus exemplaire sur ces grands enjeux pour protéger notre planète et assurer un avenir durable aux générations futures. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Hamid Abdallah Afi Didi, Vice President of the Seychelles. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to stand in front of you and to present the position of Seychelles. Tiny group of islands of only 100,000 people, 115 islands. Most people live on about 3. Our land area is about 455 square kilometers. This is less than the size of Munich in Germany. But our maritime area is 1.374 million square kilometers. This is the size of France and Turkey put together. So 100,000 people managing a huge maritime space the size of France and Turkey. What are we doing in Seychelles to protect the environment and to protect the planet? Madam Chair, the UN has set all of us countries goals that we have to protect 30% of our land, fresh water, and our oceans by 2030. 30%. Of our little amount of land, we've protected half already. Of that huge expanse of sea that we have, we've already protected 32%. In other words, we have achieved the UN 30 by 30 4 years ago. So the Seychelles has performed. And in fact, of the sea area that we're protecting, there's an area called Saya de Mala, which is the size of Switzerland. And it's actually a seagrass meadow. What does it do? It absorbs carbon emission. So our output, we emit about 600,000 tons, but our seagrass meadow absorbs 18 million tons. So in other words, for every ton that we put out, we absorb 30 tons from the rest of the world. Having done all of that, what do we find? Rising sea level. It's threatening our port, our airport, our housing infrastructure, our fuel farm, our power station, our courts. Everything is being threatened. We have to relocate our houses. We have to relocate infrastructure. It may cost us $15 to $20 million to relocate houses, $15 to $20 million to relocate infrastructure. Where will we get the money for this? Well, there's been a lot of pledges through COP28, 27, 26, now 29. And adaptation fund, the loss and damage fund, $700 million. But the mechanisms aren't clear. What Seychelles is asking, COP29, let's make this a resolution that we shall ask that the mechanisms to release those funds be decided. Just like the gong just went now, if this could have been done every time it made a boom, we could have released $1 million. I think this afternoon Seychelles would have had all the money that it needed to restore a lot of its damaged environment. So I say to COP29 and I say to the world, let us do all we can to put the words into action. There are countries punching way above their weight. Seychelles is doing its best to help the world. Please help us. Let's make these promises become a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Esperanza Maria Ecuador Francisco de Costa, Vice President of Angola. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you. Excelências, chefes de Estado e de Governo, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, é com a mais elevada honra que me dirijo às distintas delegações presentes à 29ª Conferência das Partes da Convenção Quadro das Nações Unidas sobre as Alterações Climáticas, apresentando os cumprimentos de Sua Excelência João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, Presidente da República de Angola, a quem tenho a honra de representar neste evento. Permitam-me agradecer a Sua Excelência Ilham Aliyev, Presidente da República do Azerbaijão, pela hospitalidade nesta linda cidade de Baku. Saúde igualmente o Secretariado pelo árduo trabalho e diálogos mantidos que têm permitido aproximar a importância dos marcos globais assumidos desde a assinatura do Acordo de Paris e das conferências já realizadas. Nesta conferência, precisamos de proteger os progressos alcançados na COP28 e converter os compromissos assumidos em ações concretas. Só poderemos cumprir os objetivos do Acordo de Paris se todos os países dispuserem dos meios para acelerar as medidas de atenuação às alterações climáticas e de adaptação. Consideramos fundamental envidar mais esforços para aumentar rapidamente o financiamento da adaptação e fazer com que os mercados internacionais do carbono funcionem para todos. Criar mecanismos para acompanhar e garantir que os fundos prometidos sejam cumpridos, bem como operacionalizar plenamente o Fundo de Perdas e Danos, identificando mecanismos de acesso simplificados e eficientes para financiamento aos países em desenvolvimento, que são os mais afetados pelos impactos climáticos. Minhas senhoras e meus senhores, a República de Angola, à semelhança de outros países da região africana, tem vindo a enfrentar desafios diversos, gerados por impactos significativos das alterações climáticas. A Estratégia Nacional para as Alterações Climáticas até 2035 integra, por isso, questões sobre as alterações climáticas de forma transversal nas políticas nacionais, bem como o financiamento, a melhoria da pesquisa, a observação e a análise dos cenários climáticos, de modo a identificar os múltiplos perigos e partilhar dados para responder aos diferentes problemas ligados às alterações climáticas, incluindo as migrações forçadas. A seca e a desertificação no sudoeste de Angola continua a ser a principal preocupação do governo. pois tem-se refletido negativamente nas comunidades e nos programas de desenvolvimento. Angola continua a implementar o programa de combate aos efeitos da seca na região sul de Angola, com a construção de novas barragens. Visamos promover o desenvolvimento agropecuário, o fortalecimento da segurança alimentar, conferindo maior resiliência às comunidades. Por outro lado, está em curso o Plano Nacional de Adaptação às Alterações Climáticas e em revisão a NDC para 2025, que concentrar-se-á nos setores de transporte e energia. Destacamos os esforços para o fortalecimento da matriz energética nacional com energias renováveis, contribuindo atualmente com 66% de energia proveniente de projetos fotovoltaicos e hidroelétricos, que se prevê escalar os 72% até o final de 2027, refletindo o compromisso em abordar a poluição, a redução da emissão e promover uma transição para uma economia de baixo carbono. Consideramos a valorização das florestas numa nova visão de beneficiar a criação de empregos verdes, para que a juventude e as comunidades possam ser incluídas na gestão dos ecossistemas florestais. Continuamos a envidar esforços para o aumento das áreas de conservação terrestres e iniciamos um vasto programa de identificação de zonas marinhas ecologicamente significativas que permitirão a criação de redes de áreas marinhas protegidas, fator-chave no desenvolvimento da economia azul. Assim, temos concebido estratégias, programas e projetos diferenciados para intensificar os compromissos globais em relação às metas climáticas e, simultaneamente, garantir a melhoria das condições de vida das populações, reduzindo a pobreza e propiciando um ambiente de harmonia na região da África Austral, através da cooperação profícua por via da gestão partilhada de recursos hídricos transfronteiriços. Minhas senhoras e meus senhores, as nossas perspectivas não poderão ser alcançadas com tensões e conflitos que emergem no contexto internacional. Precisamos de aumentar os nossos compromissos com a estabilidade e com o pacto do futuro que queremos, adotado recentemente na Cimeira das Nações Unidas para construirmos um futuro melhor, reduzirmos a crise climática, a fome e a pobreza, promovendo a melhoria dos sistemas alimentares, a economia de baixas emissões, a equidade do género, a educação, a inovação e a paz, como novas decisões e legado às novas gerações. Muito obrigada pela vossa atenção.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Abdallah Alamini Bazwa, Vice Chairman of the Presidential Leadership Council of Yemen. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
فخامة الرئيس إلهام علييف رئيس جمهورية أذربيجان، أصحاب الفخامة والسيادة والسمو رؤساء الدول والحكومات، السيد الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، السيدات والسادة، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أود بداية أن أتقدم ببالغ الشكر والتقدير لجمهورية أذربيجان على حفاوة الاستقبال وكرم الضيافة والتنظيم الرائع لهذا المؤتمر الدولي الهام، والذي يعد فرصة حقيقية لتضافر وتكاتف الجهود العالمية لمواجهة تحدي المناخ الذي بات يشكل تهديدا وجوديا لكوكبنا. إننا نجتمع اليوم في مدينة باكو حاملين هموم كوكبنا على أكتافنا، هموم تتجاوز الحدود والجنسيات، لتجمعنا جميعا تحت سقف واحد، سقف الحفاظ على هذا الكوكب الذي هو موطننا المشترك. ولن أسترسل في توصيف المخاطر العالمية للتغيرات المناخية بعد أن أشار إليها الكثيرون من على هذا المنبر الدولي الرفيع، لكني سأتناول الموضوع من ناحية تأثر بلدي اليمن بهذه التغيرات المناخية. فاليمن تعصف به أزمات عميقة سياسية وأمنية واقتصادية وإنسانية، تتقاطع أيضا مع أزمة مناخ عالمية تتمثل في موجات جفاف وتصحر متسارع وارتفاع درجات الحرارة ومستوى سطح البحر وأعاصير مدمرة، وكلها عوامل تفاقمت بسبب التغيرات المناخية المعقدة. وكل هذا زاد من هشاشة وضعنا الإنساني والاقتصادي الناتج عن حرب مستمرة منذ ما يزيد عن 10 سنوات أشعلتها الميليشيا الحوثية الإرهابية المدعومة إيرانيا. وقد تسببت هذه الحرب بتدمير البنى التحتية ونزوح ملايين اليمنيين وأضرار فادحة في الأرواح والممتلكات، ليشمل ذلك زراعة الميليشيات لملايين الألغام وتهديد البيئة البحرية بهجماتها الإرهابية على السفن التجارية في البحر الأحمر وخليج عدن والبحر العربي. إن أثر هذه الحرب يفاقم من صعوبة مواجهة تحديات المتغيرات المناخية. وعلى سبيل المثال فإن الأعاصير والفيضانات المفاجئة التي ضربت بلادي هذا العام تسببت بسقوط عشرات الضحايا وأكثر من 100,000 نازح. أصحاب الفخامة والسيادة، السيدات والسادة، إن الحكومة اليمنية تقف اليوم في مواجهة موجة من التحديات، فإلى جانب عملها بكل ما تستطيع للوفاء بالالتزامات الحتمية للمواطنين والدفاع عن كرامتهم وحريتهم في مواجهة مشاريع الميليشيات الحوثية والمنظمات الإرهابية الأخرى المتخادمة معها، فإن حكومتنا ملتزمة أيضا بقيادة استراتيجيات وطنية لمواجهة الآثار السلبية لتغير المناخ، وذلك من خلال تعزيز القدرات المؤسسية وتبني سياسات مستدامة تهدف إلى التكيف مع المتغيرات المناخية والتخفيف من آثارها، وتحسين إدارة الموارد الطبيعية، وتطوير قدرات المجتمعات المحلية على مواجهة الكوارث وخصوصا في المناطق الريفية والساحلية. وهو جهد يعكس إيماننا الكامل بأن الاستثمار في المناخ هو استثمار في المستقبل، استثمار في السلام والاستقرار والاستدامة. وعليه فإنني أتوجه باسم الشعب اليمني بالتحية والتقدير للأشقاء في المملكة العربية السعودية ودولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة الذين بادروا إلى هذا النوع من الاستثمار الرشيد من أجل المستقبل والتخفيف من تداعيات التغيرات المناخية على الشعب اليمني، وهو الدور المعول أيضا على المجتمع الدولي والمنظمات والفعاليات المعنية حول العالم. السيدات والسادة، إن الحديث عن واقع كوكبنا لا يمكن بأي حال من الأحوال أن يغفل آثار الحروب والانتهاكات الجسيمة على مستقبل الحياة البشرية، وهي الصورة التي يجسدها العدوان الإسرائيلي على قطاع غزة ولبنان باعتباره جريمة بحق الإنسانية والطبيعة على حد سواء. إنه جريمة بحق الحياة. ومن هذا المنبر أجدد موقفنا الثابت المتضامن مع كافة الشعوب التواقة للحرية والسلام والعدالة، وفي المقدمة الشعب الفلسطيني الصابر والمناضل في سبيل عزته وكرامته وإقامة دولته المستقلة كاملة السيادة. ونحيي نتائج القمة العربية والإسلامية الغير عادية التي انعقدت يوم أمس بالرياض. ختاما، إن الحفاظ على كوكبنا ليس خيارا بل هو واجب علينا جميعا، فالأرض هي بيتنا وهي الإرث الذي سنتركه لأجيال القادمة. إننا نؤمن بأن مواجهة هذه التحديات يتطلب تعاونا دوليا واسعا وجادا، فمواجهة تلك التحديات ليس مجرد استثمار في الحاضر بل هو استثمار في مستقبلنا المشترك. فدعونا نجعل من هذا المؤتمر نقطة تحول لالتزامنا جميعا بالعمل الجاد من أجل مستقبل أكثر أمانا واستدامة. وشكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Michael Biswick Usi, Vice President of Malawi. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam Chair, Your Excellencies, I bring to you greetings from the President of the Republic of Malawi, Dr. Lazarus Makafe Chakwera, and the people of Malawi. It is an honor for me to join you here today in Baku at this COP29 summit. This gathering is a powerful reminder of our collective duty. The duty is to secure a healthy, resilient, and sustainable planet for generations to come. Your Excellencies, I'm also profoundly honored that at this conference I am wearing two hats. representing my country, Malawi, as well as the voices of 45 other nations in the least developed countries group. Excellencies, in Malawi, the climate change is not a distant abstraction. We see its effects firsthand, and we feel its impact each day. Devastating floods, prolonged droughts, and unpredictable weather patterns continue to disrupt lives, destabilize livelihoods, and threaten the well-being of future generations. For a country like Malawi, the consequences are not only economic, but also deeply inhumane. The catastrophe comprises food security, public health, and infrastructure development, exacerbates poverty, and undermines our hard-won development gains. However, in all these hardships and obstacles we are facing, Malawi remains steadfast in its commitment to climate action. Yes, as we said, we are a small country with a big heart, the big heart to surmount our hardships. Through our national determined contributions, we have committed to ambitious targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, enhancing climate resilience, and transitioning to sustainable energy sources. Yes, with adequate resources and partnerships, we believe these targets can transform our communities, strengthen food security, and empower our people to thrive in the face of climate changes. Your Excellencies, like I said earlier, that I am also speaking on behalf of all least developed countries, I would like to make the voice louder that the hour for change is now. COP29 is not simply a conference, it is a call to action, a defining moment for our collective future. This conference follows a landmark decision and a global stake we made last year in Dubai, which reinforced that we must do more and we must do it with great resolve. As LDC's community, we call upon all the parties to implement the recommendations from the global stock tech, particularly enhancing climate finance, accelerating clean energy transitions. We must collectively accelerate our transition to renewable energy and reduce dependency on fossil fuels. Strengthening adaptation, prioritizing loss and damage. This fund must be designed to directly benefit those who have suffered the most and with flexibility to meet the specific needs to each affected nation. I thank you all.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Jeremiah Kapang Young, Vice President of Liberia. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam President, Excellency, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Liberia congratulates the government and people of Azerbaijan for assuming the presidency of COP29 and the warmest hospitality accorded us. I bring you greetings from Excellency Joseph Yuma Boakai, Senior President of the Republic of Liberia. Madam President, Excellency, we have gathered here in Baku to deliberate on issues of climate change and global challenges that continue to undermine national development. This year, we witnessed most of our lowlands being flooded, giving rise to loss of lives, destruction of property, and displacement of people. This is why COP29 must set the basis for loss and damage fund. We need a simple but accountable process that avoids unnecessary bureaucracy. Liberia calls for a stronger cooperative action and decision on Article 6.2, 6.4, and 6.8 at COP29, consistent with the African Group position in operationalizing carbon market and non-carbon credit mechanism. In 2021, Liberia formulated an ambitious second-generation nationally determined contribution committed to reduce greenhouse gas by 64% based on adequate financing. Excellency, I am pleased to inform this summit that Liberia will further increase her climate ambition during the formulation of the country's third-generation NDC, taking into consideration biodiversity protection, including the conservation of mangroves, freshwater ecosystem service, child rights, human mobility, and others. This means the issue of climate finance will be an integral part of the country's third generation NDC. Therefore, I call on developed countries to increase their contribution in fulfilling the new collective quantified goal on climate financing. Madam President, Excellency, Liberia has established a national climate laboratory at the University of Liberia. This learning center is intended to build the human resource of the country in addressing climate challenges at the national level. To conclude, humanity has faced numerous problems in the past, but it is collective efforts that have kept us going. This is our time. If we hold together and speak with one voice, holding each other accountable in a fair and equitable manner, we will fight the nightmare of climate change and global warming, and we will succeed. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Prosper Bazuma Banza, Vice President of Burundi. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellences, Monsieur le Président de la COP29, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, et vous distingués chefs de délégation, c'est un honneur et un réel plaisir de prononcer ce discours en lieu et place de Son Excellence le général-major Evariste Ndayishimiye, président de la République du Burundi et du gouvernement burundais à son rendez-vous crucial de la COP29. Mais avant tout propos, permettez-moi d'apprécier à juste titre l'accueil chaleureux dont nous avons fait l'objet moi-même et ma délégation par le gouvernement d'Azerbaïdjan. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le Burundi, pays de 1001 collines couvertes de verdure et pays aux forêts et savanes, se trouve malgré tout confronté aux effets du changement climatique comme les autres pays du monde, ce qui se manifeste chez nous par de faibles précipitations ou même de fortes précipitations ainsi que des périodes de saison sèche devenues plus longues. Le Burundi s'est fermement engagé aux côtés des pays signataires de l'accord de Paris à travers le document des contributions déterminées au niveau national qui se réfère sur le plan national de développement du Burundi 2018-2027. À travers ce document, le gouvernement burundais vise que les écosystèmes puissent s'adapter naturellement au changement climatique. Des actions prioritaires d'adaptation et d'atténuation des effets dus au changement climatique dans toutes les politiques et plans sectoriels sont prises en compte par une approche multisectorielle. Et ici, vous me permettrez de ne citer qu'un programme, en l'occurrence celui de la mise en œuvre de la reforestation de tout le pays dans un vaste programme national de plantation d'arbres dénommé Ewe Burundi Urambaye en français au Burundi, pays devenu plutôt vert. Pour mieux opérationnaliser et rendre durables ces programmes, des outils de planification et de suivi ont été développés. De plus, de vastes programmes de cours environnementaux ont été intégrés dans les programmes d'enseignement à tous les niveaux, du primaire jusqu'à l'enseignement supérieur. le Burundi s'aligne à la position commune des pays du continent africain AGN ainsi que celle des pays les moins avancés. Et ce qui est en conformité avec l'agenda 2030 ainsi que la vision d'un Burundi émergent en 2040 et développé en 2060. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le Burundi voudrait saisir cette occasion pour demander aux partis impliqués dans la mise en œuvre de l'accord de Paris de s'acquitter de leurs engagements de soutenir les pays plus exposés aux impacts du changement climatique dont le Burundi. En conclusion, nous voudrions interpeller les mécanismes financiers à mettre en place des processus simplifiés permettant l'accès facile aux fonds de financement climatique afin que les pays les plus vulnérables puissent faire face le plus rapidement possible aux effets du changement climatique. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Pedro Sanchez Perez Caston, President of the Government of Spain. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excelencias, he venido hasta aquí para alertar de una terrible verdad que la ciencia lleva demasiado tiempo señalando y que aún así hay algunos que siguen despreciando, y es que el cambio climático mata. Solo el año pasado mató a más de 300.000 personas y acaba de contribuir a la muerte de más de 220 de mis compatriotas en España, en el mayor desastre natural de nuestra historia. Un desastre que, según las primeras investigaciones, habría sido menos probable y menos intenso sin el efecto del cambio climático. El planeta, por tanto, nos está dando señales cada vez más claras, y es que si no actuamos en el futuro cercano, nuestros países sufrirán más sequías, más olas de calor, más lluvias torrenciales, más incendios y enfermedades. Y muchos sectores económicos colapsarán. Cientos de ciudades y pueblos se volverán inhabitables y la subida del mar y de los termómetros harán que prácticamente sea inhabitable el poder vivir en esas localidades. Esta amenaza existencial es ya evidente para cualquiera. Ha pasado de los artículos académicos a nuestras televisiones y ventanas, pero aún así, en este momento tan crucial para la humanidad, estamos viendo a muchos gobiernos titubear, frenar el paso cuando se necesita avanzar más rápido o incluso negar la evidencia, darse la vuelta y caminar hacia atrás, volviendo al petróleo, a los vehículos de combustión, a la desregulación, solo para que los ricos sigan siendo más ricos, aun a sabiendas de que esa fórmula nos conducirá a todos al desastre. Y por tanto no podemos permitirlo. Sabemos cuál es el problema, también sabemos qué tenemos que hacer para resolverlo. No necesitan medidas drásticas, no tenemos que renunciar a la abundancia ni volver a la edad de piedra. Tenemos que transformarnos, tenemos que cambiar la forma en la que nos movemos, generamos riqueza y nos relacionamos con el planeta. Tenemos que innovar, tenemos que descarbonizar, tenemos que emplear nuevos materiales y procesos, impulsar la circularidad, adaptar nuestras ciudades, nuestros campos, infraestructuras, para que sean más resilientes a las nuevas realidades climáticas. Por tanto, no se trata de decrecer, sino de crecer de una manera distinta, más sostenible y, por tanto, más responsable. Lograrlo no va a ser fácil, pero es posible. Y lo sé porque lo dice la evidencia, porque, por ejemplo, en mi país, en España, ya lo estamos haciendo. En los últimos años hemos convertido la transición ecológica en una fuente de modernización y de prosperidad. Hemos reducido en un 40% nuestras emisiones y nuestro consumo de recursos naturales. Y al mismo tiempo hemos sido la economía de la OCDE que más ha crecido y que más empleo ha creado durante estos últimos años. Y se puede crecer con equidad, por tanto, y respetar el planeta. Por eso les ruego, no hagan caso a quienes dicen que la transición ecológica es incompatible con el bienestar de las naciones o que es mala para las clases medias y trabajadoras, porque no es cierto. De hecho, es justo lo contrario. Si no conquistamos la sostenibilidad, si nuestros niveles de bienestar y seguridad no se adecúan a esa sostenibilidad van a caer considerablemente a lo largo de la próxima década. Y los primeros en sufrirlo serán precisamente esas clases medias y trabajadoras, porque son las que trabajan en los sectores y viven en las zonas más amenazadas. Eso es justo lo que ha pasado en España, en concreto en Valencia, donde todavía hay personas desaparecidas y cientos de hogares cubiertos por el lodo. Por eso estoy aquí, Excelencias, porque en este momento solo hay una cosa tan importante como ayudar a las víctimas de esta terrible tragedia en Valencia, y es evitar que se produzca de nuevo, evitar que los desastres naturales se repitan y se multipliquen. España cumplirá, se lo garantizo. Vamos a seguir transformándonos para hacer que antes de 2050 seamos una sociedad neutra en carbono y respetuosa con los límites medioambientales, pero de poco servirá si solo lo hacemos unos y no todos, porque el planeta tiene una sola atmósfera y todos sus patrones climáticos están interconectados. Por eso concluyo pidiendo, como uno de los países más vulnerables ante el cambio climático, que actuemos, que dejemos de arrastrar los pies, que dejemos de negar la ciencia, que cumplamos con la promesa que le hicimos a la humanidad hace 7 años cuando firmamos el Acuerdo de París. Salvemos las vidas de nuestros ciudadanos, salvemos sus economías y salvemos el planeta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Royal Highness Al Hussein bin Abdullah II, Crown Prince of Jordan. Your Royal Highness, you have the floor.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. On behalf of Jordan, I thank His Excellency President Ilham Aliyev and the people and government of Azerbaijan for hosting this important summit. We have gathered here under the banner of solidarity, the family of nations joining as one to protect the planet we share. We all know that without common action, we are destined to fall short. Yet, we meet at a moment when faith in our ability to stand together is broken, when global norms, including the UN Charter and the Geneva Conventions, are being flouted with impunity, when trust in the international community to stand up for its own values has collapsed, when humanitarian violations are broadcast daily for the whole world to see, yet continue to be ignored and dismissed without consequence. Saving our planet must start from the premise that all lives are worth saving. The solidarity we need depends on embracing that truth. Yet, over the past 13 months, the world has stood by as thousands of Palestinians have been killed in Gaza, the majority women and children. How can we work together for our shared future when some are deemed unworthy of one? The ongoing violence in my region undermines peace and security beyond its borders. In the end, this will benefit no one. My part of the world is already exposed to the harsh realities of climate change, to heat, to drought, to loss of biodiversity. The war is compounding environmental challenges for Gaza and beyond. A recent United Nations Environment Programme study highlighted contamination of land, water and air. Sewage and waste management systems have been destroyed. Entire communities are now graveyards of debris. Another study found that rebuilding Gaza will result in total emissions higher than the annual emissions of more than 135 countries. An inclusive, just approach to the climate challenge requires that we address the links between climate, peace and security. Nowhere is this clearer than among global refugee communities and their hosts, who are some of the most vulnerable to climate change. During COP29, His Majesty King Abdullah II launched the Global Climate Refugee Nexus Initiative. 58 countries have signed on to date, and we invite others to join. 1 in every 3 people living in Jordan is a refugee, and our infrastructure is feeling the strain. We face rising demand on stressed resources and services, including water, health and education. And while we in Jordan have made significant strides in clean energy, water conservation, and climate-smart agriculture, these efforts are not enough. We need to rally communities around climate action and secure a better future for our youth and generations to come. In my country, we are implementing climate policies while grappling with the impacts of conflict. Yet, we can't solve these twin crises alone. As our summit works towards a new collective quantified goal, we must prioritize refugee hosting countries, especially those in climate hotspots, and ensure that global climate financing mechanisms uphold accountability and transparency for all. Just as urgently, we must rebuild trust in the international community itself and acknowledge past failures. Our inability to collectively do what is right is turning us into passive observers, fully aware yet unwilling to act. As His Majesty King Abdullah has said, no one is a bystander in the fight for life on Earth. That means fighting against climate change, fighting for peace, and fighting to alleviate human suffering together, because every life is worth fighting for. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome Her Excellency Ms. Mia Amor Mortley, Prime Minister of Barbados. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. It is fitting that this 29th COP should take place here in this beautiful city of Baku, standing as it does the sentinel between East and West doorway, between the global North and the global South, a bridge between the ancient, the modern, and indeed the future, with the majestic Caucasus Mountains behind us, reminding us of the heights that we must now scale in order to be successful in this process. We are in the midst of a climate crisis. We are in a season of superlatives. And the reality is that these extreme weather events that the world is facing daily suggest that humanity and the planet are hurtling towards catastrophe. The extreme weather requires from us a serious commitment at this COP with respect to new collective quantified goals that enable us to reverse the current trajectory and to fund mitigation, adaptation, and of course loss and damage. This commitment must encompass 7 critical elements. 1, the proper capitalization of the Loss and Damage Fund, and indeed the capitalization of the dedicated SIDS window in the JEF's Special Climate Change Fund. The latter remains unfunded, and the first underfunded. The reality is that the Loss and Damage Fund has only attracted $700 million, and this is despite the numerous crises besetting small island developing states, and indeed in our own region, Hurricane Beryl, which has caused serious damage to countries, from housing to public infrastructure, and indeed from agriculture to fisheries in my own country. Secondly, proper capitalization of developing countries must also include and have access to cheaper, longer-term capital in circumstances where they can scale up investments for adaptation. Thirdly, the economic noose of tightening the fiscal space must be loosened by adopting the principles, in our view, of Bridgetown Initiative 3.0 through the delivery of urgently needed financial reforms. We must change the rules of the game, shock-proof vulnerable economies, and indeed review debt sustainability while at the same time augmenting resources. Fourthly, rich countries must deliver on their commitments. We must ensure, time and again, that the commitments made, whether for 0.7% of GNI, or indeed the $100 billion, or recently the $30 billion with respect to biodiversity, that these are met. We must have transparency and accountability on the part of everyone. Fifthly, we must agree in principle that developed countries and carbon producers can, in fact, along with others who are willing, help us find new money to augment the resources. We accept that the current commitments for public money may not be sufficient, and therefore we need to consider levies, as the Global Solidarity Levies Committee and Coalition is seeking to do. If we put a $5 per ton on CO2 for fossil fuel extraction, we can raise $210 billion a year. If we put $100 per ton on CO2 for shipping, we can raise in excess of $80 billion a year. And we've not addressed aviation or indeed the elephant in the room, a 0.1% levy on all bonds and stocks that can raise us in excess of $400 billion. Sixthly, we need to deal with methane. Methane is responsible for 45% of current global warming and is 80 times as devilish as CO2 with respect to warming the planet. This makes mitigation of methane the most effective way to slow the rate of warming in our world. And I trust and pray that we can have a global methane agreement, as Pope Francis led the call earlier this year for us to see a parallel track to decarbonization. Finally, we need high-integrity carbon markets to ensure that there is fairness, and that we need a universal carbon pricing mechanism to remove the disparity between countries in the North and South. My friends, every COP must make progress irrespective of the geopolitical dynamics. There is an urgent need to reform this COP process, and I hope that we can meet that as we go forward. As we leave this city of winds and land of fire, may we ensure that our ambitions are not only high, but our actions mimic the ambitions which we have, if we are to ensure that our people are not to be the victims of this awful climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Alexander De Croo, Prime Minister of Belgium. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Madam President, dear colleagues, this is not a time to falter. Emissions continue to rise, and we see more and more destructive climate disasters. There is one certainty. If we do not alter our policies, we will see an increase of 3 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Our citizens expect us to show a way out. They want us to collaborate on a faster and more resolute decarbonization and moving away from fossil fuels. We have to be ambitious in our goals, but effective and flexible in how to achieve them. Dear colleagues, meetings like these are often perceived as talking shops. And yes, these strenuous negotiations are far from perfect. But if you compare climate policy now to a decade ago, we live in different worlds. A strong majority has embarked on the journey to net zero. Yet, many challenges remain. The safest, cleanest and cheapest energy is the one we do not use. We must do more on energy efficiency. It's a win-win. Investment in clean energy is increasing everywhere, but least developed countries are missing out. We are seeing massive amounts of renewable capacity being added to our grids, but interconnectivity and storage capacity have not followed the pace. In this climate challenge, there is no one silver bullet. There is not one solution that will fix all of our issues. We need to use everything we have. Not a policy of less, but a policy of more. More growth, more cooperation, more innovation, more investment, but affordable and achievable for everyone. This is our political objective in order to ensure a just transition. Citizens will buy electric cars and will insulate their homes, but only when it makes economic sense. Allow me as well to emphasize the importance of ensuring a just climate transition. Global competition needs to be fair. In this regard, Belgium and the EU will redouble efforts to strengthen the competitiveness and the sustainability of our economy. A just transition also matters domestically, as a transition for our economies should leave no one behind and should ensure the creation of high-quality jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, let us turn to the objectives for COP29. First, this must be the enabling COP. Let's implement what we agreed upon. Future national plans should align with the 1.5 degrees goal. Second, this is also the financing COP. The new collective quantified finance goal will be its most important deliverable. In reaching this goal, we should prioritize the needs of the least developed and the most vulnerable countries. And only when we mobilize private actors, we will reach the trillions of investments that are needed globally. Dear colleagues, Belgium has doubled its climate finance, given mostly in grants and focused on the least developed countries. On top of this, thanks to public guarantees, we mobilize an additional €500 million to developing countries. Belgium is also an adaptation champion. We have to redouble our efforts in adaptation to reduce the impact of climate change on planet and people. Adaptation is absolutely crucial to convince our citizens that they can make a difference in their lives and ensure their safety. Ladies and gentlemen, humanity could easily despair and lose hope. We could also lose ourselves in the complexity and the impossibility of the task at hand. However, we should find inspiration in what we have achieved so far. Let's create a context where these solutions become accessible to everyone. Only then COP29 will be a success. Let's make this happen. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Sir Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. The United Kingdom is determined to stand alongside those countries on the front line of the climate crisis today and to seize the opportunities of tomorrow. Because action on climate now is the route towards economic growth, energy security, better jobs and national security in the long term, to deliver on the Paris Agreement and keep 1.5 degrees within reach. In the first 100 days of my government, we launched Great British Energy to create clean British power. We created a national wealth fund to invest in the green industries and jobs of the future. We scrapped the ban on onshore wind, committed to no new North Sea oil and gas licences, and closed the UK's final coal power plant at the end of September, becoming the first G7 economy to phase out coal power, in line with the international agreement at COP28 to transition from fossil fuels, and the UK's ambitious goal to be the first major economy to deliver clean power by 2030. Today, I can confirm 3 months ahead of the deadline the UK's 2035 international target, our nationally determined contribution to reduce all greenhouse gas emissions by at least 81% on 1990 levels, aligned with 1.5 degrees. And we urge all parties to come forward with ambitious targets of their own, as we all agreed at the last COP. We will work in partnership to support other countries to develop their own commitments and transition through our forthcoming Global Clean Power Alliance. And finance will be its first focus. We will honour the commitment made by the previous government to provide £11.6 billion of climate finance between April 2021 and March 2026. But we must use public finance as a multiplier to unlock much more private investment and reform our international financial institutions. Today we launched the new CIF capital market mechanism listed on the London Stock Exchange, with the potential to mobilise up to $75 billion in additional climate capital for developing countries over the next decade, putting the UK's role as a global financial centre at the service of driving the green finance and green energy transitions. Climate action is at the heart of this government's mission for the protection and prosperity of Britain and the world, writ large across our domestic and international priorities. We are taking the urgent action needed to protect our planet and its people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Viktor Orbán, Prime Minister of Hungary. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank President Aliyev for hosting this important conference. Azerbaijan is a key partner for Europe in reaching our climate goals, making it the ideal place to host today's conference. Last week, Budapest hosted the European Political Community Summit and the European Council Summit as well. Almost 50 heads of state and government gathered in Budapest, where European leaders adopted a new declaration on competitiveness. The Budapest Declaration will shape the European Union's approach to climate issues as well. Our mission is to make Europe more competitive, and we approach climate protection with this vision in our mind. We are proud that Hungary is among the few countries of the world in the recent years which has been able to enhance its economic performance parallel to decreasing its emissions. We cannot sacrifice our industry or agriculture in this process. We must continue advancing the green transition while also maintaining our use of natural gas, oil and nuclear energy. The price of climate change should not be paid by our farmers. Farmers are the backbone of our economy and society. We must offer them stability and predictability to thrive. We cannot impose unrealistic quotas or burdensome rules on farmers and companies, but should offer practical support for them. The green transition and the fight against climate change should not be done against the business community, but together with it. We need clear financial guarantees and significant investment. Large corporations must contribute their fair share to climate protection. Our climate policy should be guided by careful consideration and common sense, not by ideology, alarmism or panic. Each should align with the opinion and interest of European citizens. In Hungary, we are also positioning ourselves to be a significant player in electric vehicle development and electricity storage. We continue to invest into our already robust nuclear industry, increasing its share to 70% when it comes to supplying our all electric demand. And geographically, we play a key role in energy transit between East and West. Hungary stands out in Europe with the lowest utility cost for citizens, while also achieving one of the highest rates of green energy expansion over the past several years. We are a leader in economically sustainable climate protection, ranking fourth among EU countries for reducing carbon emissions per unit of energy produced. Looking ahead, we have set even more ambitious goals by 2030. We aim not just for a 40% reduction in greenhouse emission, but for 50%. I firmly believe that by working together, we can balance ambition with pragmatism, establishing Europe as a global leader in climate action, with compromising the prosperity of our industries and agriculture. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Distinguished heads of state and government, delegates, honored guests, this brings us to the end of our national statements for today. We will continue with the delivery of national statements tomorrow at 10:00 hours in this plenary. With this, I declare this joint meeting of the COP CMP, and the CMA adjourn. Hit it together. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, we will now hear special messages. It is my pleasure to welcome His Excellency Mr. Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping's Special Representative and First Vice Premier of China. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
尊敬的各位同事、女士们、先生们、朋友们，很高兴作为中国国家主席习近平的特别代表出席世界领导人气候峰会。首先，我谨荣幸地转达习近平主席对阿塞拜疆举办峰会的良好祝愿。习主席高度赞赏阿塞拜疆作为COP29主席国为推动全球气候治理做出的积极努力和贡献，预祝大会取得圆满成功。今年是联合国气候变化框架公约生效实施30周年，站在新的历史起点，我们要携手推动巴库大会取得令人满意的成果，不负国际社会热切期盼。为此，我谈3点看法和建议。第一，加强全球气候治理，共同但有区别的责任原则是基石。发达国家应当展现更大的雄心和行动，履行率先减排义务，提前碳中和时间。发展中国家也要在能力范围内尽最大努力。中方将提交覆盖全经济范围，包括所有温室气体的2035国家自主贡献，努力争取2060年前实现碳中和。第二，解决气候变化问题，归根结底要靠发展方式的彻底变革。中国电动汽车、锂电池、光伏产品等优质产能，为世界绿色发展提供了重要助力。国际社会应共同努力，以公平、有序、公正的方式加速能源转型，维护新能源产业链、供应链稳定，促进绿色产品和技术的可及与革新，加快培育新质生产力。第三，提升应对气候变化能力，资金和技术是关键支撑。2016年以来，中国提供并动员项目资金超过1770亿元人民币，有力地支持其他发展中国家应对气候变化。我们呼吁发达国家加大对发展中国家的资金支持和技术转让，期待这次大会达成更有力度的新资金项目，为下一阶段全球气候行动提供信心和保障。中方愿同各方一道，以构建人类命运共同体理念为引领，合力保护人类共同的地球家园，共建清洁美丽的世界。谢谢大家。
Thank you, Your Excellency. It is my pleasure to welcome Mr. Hashim Samitro Dijojo Hadikusumo, Special Envoy to the President of Indonesia. You have the floor.
I am representing my President, Prabowo Subianto, who unfortunately cannot attend this important event due to prior commitments. He promises to enhance Indonesia's climate action and continue the policies set out by his predecessors. President Prabowo envisions economic growth beyond 8% per year and ensures green, resilient, and inclusive development for all of our people. This vision determines our ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions towards net zero by 2060 or sooner, and avoiding 1 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions. We are shifting from fossil fuel-based to renewable-based development with 75% of additional power generation capacity. 70,000 kilometers of smart transmission lines will be constructed to transmit energy across Indonesia's main and most populous islands. Indonesia will also develop a green smart grid, adding 42 gigawatts of wind and solar power, tripling energy capacity totaling 75 gigawatts. Affordable clean energy will be provided to accelerate growth, create more jobs, ensure food security, and alleviate poverty for the people's prosperity, while balancing growth with environmental sustainability. We will commence to reforest more than 12 million hectares of severely degraded forests over time, revitalize degraded land to increase food production, protect our oceans for a prosperous blue economy, and empower our local communities for climate resilience and quality green jobs. Our efforts require three enablers: a comprehensive green growth policy framework, which we are finalizing, massive investments of $235 billion, and international collaboration. We need to mobilize global resources in terms of technology, finance, and investment, forming a united front to combat global warming and reclaim humankind's right to survive. Indonesia is indeed blessed with extensive saline aquifers, which offer nearly 500 gigatons of carbon capture and storage capacity. Several multinational companies have expressed high interest in such multi-billion-dollar projects. We further commit to developing a robust carbon market, starting with optimizing Indonesia's 557 million tons of verified carbon credits. We must work together to provide a better future for next generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, I wish you a good evening. The high-level segment will resume tomorrow.